This week on The Living Room, we meet two furry friends. Retired greyhounds are looking for a new home. Then open the doors and cancel classes, university students are out to protest the recent funding cuts. And we follow in the footsteps of the new graduates, finding their feet after their degree.
Hi, good evening and welcome to The Living Room. I'm your host Elena and I'm here with Matt, Will and Luke.
Hello.
Hi guys. We've got a huge night ahead of us and tonight it's our Greyhound special. We go to meet two amazing greyhounds to see what their life is like off the tracks.
Wish I could live a retired life, eating treats, lazing around. Get me off this couch and get me back home.
These dogs actually have to pass a test to do that though. You might have a little bit of trouble with that.
Okay.
Let's take a look. Hey Wilders, we're here at the Greyhound Adoption Program in Baxter and we're going to meet some dogs who need a new home. Let's go! We're on our way to meet Michelle and her new puppy pal. Hi Michelle, who do we have here?
This is Samosa. She's 3 years old and she came down here today, so hopefully we'll find her a home this weekend.
She is a wonderful greyhound. Where do all the greyhounds come from at this facility?
The dogs come to us usually from the trainers and the owners after they finish their racing career, or if they don't believe the dog is going to have a racing career. We assess the dog, we test them with small dogs to make sure that they're going to be able to get on with little dogs, and if we feel that they're right for us, we will often then send them out to foster.
What do you think is the ideal home for a greyhound?
Look, any home, but different dogs for different people. Even though they're all greyhounds, they are still different. They're like people, they've got different personalities. This little girl's really quiet, she's just absolutely gorgeous.
She is beautiful.
But the next one could be bouncy and silly and like a puppy, even though it might be 3 or 4 years old.
So Michelle, Samosa here is black, but she's a greyhound. Why isn't she grey?
Greyhound's just the name of the dog. It doesn't relate to the colour. They come in lots of colours. Predominantly they're black. Most of our dogs are black, but they have other colours as well. You can get grey greyhounds, which we call blue.
Really?
But they're quite rare. We have brindles, which are the stripy ones that often look like tigers. But even then, there's lots of colours within that. You can get very light coloured ones and you can get very dark coloured ones. Then we get cow dogs, as we call them, because they're white with big black patches on them. And there's fawn and there's red. They do come in lots and lots of colours.
Why do you think some people aren't willing to adopt a greyhound?
I think greyhounds have a poor image because people don't know them. You know, they only ever see them on a racetrack, and you might see them on the television racing, and they don't see them in this lovely calm environment. Although they're a high energy dog for racing, they're bred to sprint, so they don't have much stamina. So when you do adopt a dog like this, it doesn't need a lot of exercise. And I think people get put off with, they see a racing dog and they think, oh no, I'm not going to have time or the energy to walk this dog all the time. But you really don't have to.
So we've had a great time here today with Michelle and Samosa. Let's go see where the greyhounds go after they've been adopted. Over to you, Luke.
Hey Wilders, we're here at the park with our friends Cooper and Julian. So tell us a bit about Cooper's hobbies.
Cooper loves walking in the park. He also loves teddies as well. He's obsessed with teddies.
Oh, no way!
Yeah, it's great. And he loves bananas as well. He's an absolute fiend for bananas.
Oh, I love bananas myself. We know that Cooper was an ex-racing dog. Does he have a lot of energy?
Well, he loves going to the park, but he spends most of his days sleeping actually, so...
We see Cooper's wearing this green collar. So what does that mean?
It means that Cooper's passed the test at the Greyhound Adoption Program. It means that we can actually come into a home and be a little chill dog actually.
We know that greyhounds are good with kids, but what about other animals?
Cooper's actually got 2 cat friends at home as well.
2 cats? No way, what are their names?
Moya and Lola.
So as you can see, greyhounds aren't scary, they're just lovable gentle giants, just like any other dog.
So what was it like to work with greyhounds, Matt?
Well, it's funny you ask, actually. The dog we worked with, Cooper, despite him being a greyhound and having that energetic reputation, he was incredibly relaxed. It was really hard to get him to look at the screen and interact with us and sit down. Like, I'm sure as you remember, because you were in it.
I definitely was.
We had to bribe him with treats just to get him to look our way.
We did. I remember those bananas. Don't we, Luke?
Not those bloody bananas.
Now, Matt, I worked with you on that film, but my role was in front of the camera. What would you say the process was like behind the scenes?
Well, I would say that definitely the hardest part of the process was the editing afterwards. We had so many issues with the computers in our editing suites that we just kept losing footage. Often we'd lose hours of work.
Oh my goodness, really?
Work all of it back up.
Tell me you found those clips.
I mean, you saw them. They were there, but it wasn't easy.
Definitely not. So tell me about that soundtrack. Was it hot or not?
Yep, we got it in the end. I really won't miss hearing that soundtrack again, though. During that editing process, I had to listen to the same notes every day for like 4 hours a day.
Thanks for chatting to us, Matt.
No worries.
Now in our next segment, we're going back to university to talk to the millennials and see how their student protests are going.
They say welfare, we say welfare, 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 welfare. They say come back.
This was the scene at the State Library as hundreds of students came out to protest the Turnbull government's latest proposed cuts to the Education Department's budget. To find out more, we decided to talk to someone who was actively seeking out to fight back against these cuts. We asked Natalie, as a current student/activist involved with organising the protests, how these cuts would affect students like her.
So over the new year, the government passed a huge funding cut to universities by denying 10,000 students access to Commonwealth-supported places, as well as a proposal to lower the HECS repayment threshold, meaning students would have to pay their debt back sooner when they were earning less. For students, it's a huge attack, especially on students who come from poorer or regional and rural areas, because it means they're not able to access subsidised places, which is sometimes the only reason really that students are able to come to universities.
Turnbull, get out, we know what you're all about.
Cuts, job losses, money for the bosses.
It's not particularly surprising. Obviously this has been something that we've had governments try to do for ages, but especially I'm from a regional area and I definitely couldn't have been able to come to university if I couldn't access Commonwealth subsidised places. So knowing that people from my hometown, people just like me, won't be able to access in the future is just outrageous.
No, we won't offend you, trying to negotiate with them. Instead we said, no, we will cause havoc for you on this campus until you retract these cuts.
The huge funding cut means that they have to make up the revenue in other places, which means that they're pushing through huge cuts often to arts departments, scrapping courses, cutting staff, a whole range of things that are just really ruining the quality of our education. Teachers who have a PhD qualification are no longer being hired because it's too expensive. Tutorial sizes are now at 30 instead of 20. And also places like the Australian Catholic University have gutted a whole bunch of diplomas and arts courses, and that's sort of been true for a lot of other universities, including the Australian National University. Well, obviously this cut is going to affect not just the students who are accessing higher education now, but obviously in the future as well. This is sort of the writing on the wall for what universities will pursue, and already we've seen students not being able to access higher education. So really, will actually be more thousands of students who won't be able to access it by totally walling off accessible education. So I first became an activist around education issues in 2014 when I came onto university campus at the same time that Tony Abbott was trying to push through full feeding regulation. I joined one of the clubs on campus, Socialist Alternative, that does a lot of work with the National Union of Students with their education campaign, and that was really sort of my first steps into getting involved. The fight has been a long one, and it's definitely one we've got ahead of us for a very long time, but every little bit helps. And so the more people who come to the rallies, the more people who take a stand and get involved, it really makes a difference. And I really encourage more people to do that.
So Will, how difficult was it to shoot a live video?
So our pre-production notes had to be like all done and dusted What we did is we picked the talents out from the crowd and see who was yelling the most, who had the most passion. It was pretty hard not to join in when all they were saying was F Malcolm Turnbull.
Oh my goodness, can't believe they got away with that. So that's quite an important subject. What advice would you have for others who are wanting to make similar films like this?
Well, it's really important to consider the ethics when you're talking about a political subject. So that affects so many university students such as us. You have to be respectful, but you can't be afraid about asking the hard-hitting questions. But you need a good story, you need great TV, and that's what this story is all about.
Absolutely. Now, most of your footage was filmed outside. How did you go with making sure all that audio was great to put through production?
Yeah, so we had a bit of trouble controlling the elements. The audio was a bit fuzzy, but we got around that, and I think everyone who worked on it said they were proud of the finished product.
Thanks for talking to us, Will. Now for our final segment, we're going to follow the footsteps of university graduates and see them embark on their new journeys into the career world.
It's the age-old question. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh God.
Sound familiar? As many students are returning to their studies, this is often a stressful matter. Just how likely is it that you get employed after university? Where to next with students like Lyrica?
So starting uni so far has been really good. I feel like the stuff I've learned from year one has transitioned really well into year two. So right now I am currently in a studio that specializes in studios. Basically we're learning about what goes on during a live studio, I suppose. So, you have your camera operators, your directors, your vision mixers and whatnot, but so far so good. I've been really liking the content we've learned, especially with the media degree that I'm in. I feel like that job is it's not in demand as much as other jobs are, so that's one of my concerns about leaving this course after graduating, and yeah.
As of 2017, it was reported by the Graduate Outcomes Survey that 78% of university graduates nationwide were in full-time employment 4 months after graduating, with the overall employment status of undergraduates sitting at 87%. The government and defense sector showed the greatest increase in demand across the state, growing 53%. Luckily for Lyrica, job ads for science and technology also rose by 44% and 18% for careers in advertising, arts and media. It seems there is now a rising trend of students getting themselves employed. But what are the biggest challenges that students face in getting a job? We asked the university's careers counsellor, Piera Ibrahim, and see what she says.
The common challenges for students after they graduate is that they're up against not only students that have perhaps completed their their programs, so their peers, but also they're up against students that have also completed a very similar qualification at other tertiary institutions. So I guess that employers are not just looking for somebody who just completes their program, but they're looking at, well, what else can they offer?
Great advice. Now let's go over to two past university students, Steve and Rakisha, who have been in the job market, and we asked them what they would have done differently.
If I had my time again, I'd have spent more time trying to do internships and just exploring what's out there a little bit more while at uni, because that gives you a much better idea of what you might want to pursue sort of as a career outside of uni.
If I had to do things differently, I would take more risks, and I would take more of I would take up the opportunities that came my way at various stages within the last 8 years that I've been working.
And I mean, there's a lot of good material out there these days on this sort of thing. I mean, 80,000 Hours is an example of an organisation that tries to sort of set out some of these things to think about. So I definitely recommend that people just sort of sit down and think some of these things through.
I found it was those students that I got to see throughout the years who were quite keen. I got to see them at the job shop, asking and putting their hand up, in every opportunity, and they made sure that by the time that they were applying for graduate, positions or programs, they had their resume was, I guess, was stacked up with lots of experience, relevant experiences. They had the skills and they were well prepared.
I can definitely relate to that pressure. I mean, I've done so many cold calls and I've still only got my tip of my toes in the door.
We all know how it is. Most students don't really get much intern jobs or hands-on work. It's all about what happens after sort of university and see where it goes from there.
Now, it's easy to say that it's not quite fair, but we have to be determined to strike out on our own. What were the most important aspects of university life that you wanted to include in your film, Luke?
Firstly, we needed a setting, so we needed heaps of B-roll. A lot of it was mainly around RMIT campus, as you can see in here.
And how did you find it working together as a team?
It made it so much simpler working on different sort of scenes. It made post-production much more difficult, but in the end, it worked out.
And that's all for tonight's program. Now join us next week and we're going to follow our resident vet, Dr. Chris Brown, through the Bornean jungles to find some orangutans. Catch you then.